They did not want to get rid of him. But again, like you said, man, like the draft passed and they got rid of that pick
Mm.
and it was off the table. They had no other choice but to include Jared in that deal.
Gooch, I'm curious about Kyrie a little bit because like I'm someone who's probably defended him more than most, and I do think it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that Cy was obviously unhappy about what was going on when he was absent, and I think it's interesting because you look back and Kyrie was obviously playing until he got hurt last year and kind of became like the star in this city, and especially with I think a lot of Nets fans because he also kind of dated back to our days of going to Jersey and rooting for the Jason Kidd team, and really embraced Nets culture and made Nets fans kind of feel like this is a preeminent organization and that like the Knicks were kind of never even something that he was thinking that much about. But I'm curious if you think that the him leaving coupled with him leaving for those 7 games coupled with like Durant obviously now playing and even his absence and everything like that, if that made him kind of lose a little bit of influence and strength within the organization. Because when they first got here, it kind of felt like Kyrie was leading the charge to Brooklyn and that he was almost as influential or more influential than even KD was.
Well, I mean, I think it goes with what every man and woman says, right? The only thing that we have is our word. And Kyrie last year was out mysteriously with that shoulder injury, and we just hadn't heard about it for 8 weeks. A couple of questionable decision making on his end. So, yeah, to answer your question, yes, I do think that he did lose some of his power. And then coming into this season, he goes, whatever, 2 weeks without the team, 7 games. And, there were different things tossed around. What I was told was that he was upset over the Capitol Hill incident. And, I don't want to get into anything else, further talking about people's mental health or anything like that. But those types of things were happening. And the Nets were fine with that. They were okay. They were understanding. Like I mentioned, early in this podcast, was that they care about, the betterment of their players and their well-being. But when those videos went viral on social media, I think that's when Kyrie kind of lost really much of his word, his say. He wasn't really exactly. I'm not disrespecting him in any way, but he said he wanted to fight social injustice, but he was out partying at a club with his family and violated COVID protocols. So, for the Nets, like I think Kyrie is still obviously, look, they're not here without him, so he gets that respect. But I'm not really sure now with a healthy Kevin Durant around. I don't think he's the one calling the shots anymore.
I think they recognize that Kevin Durant is the fulcrum. If Kevin Durant plays in the playoffs, they win the championship. You're not losing the championship with one or with two of Harden, Kyrie, and KD. If you have two of them, you're not losing, especially with these additions that they're making, which we're going to talk about right after this. But the reason why I always say that Kyrie is the team MVP because the spirit of this thing is coming from Kyrie, right? I think Kevin Durant could win the Finals MVP, and James Harden could win the NBA MVP, and still Kyrie would be the Nets team MVP. Like where that team is emotionally, I think it balances on Kyrie. Because it's like that saying from the movie, who put this thing together? Me. That's who. And that's Kyrie. Kyrie put this thing together. Pooch, does he deserve that kind of credit? Is it legitimate to kind of look at him as the architect of this monster that we're rooting for now?
Of course. I mean, the guy is unbelievable. He creates art on the court. And I remember when he had gone on his hiatus, a lot of, talk show hosts were saying, is he worth all this trouble? And the answer is absolutely yes. I mean, like you watch a guy play on the court, you tell me, 2 point guards that are better than him in this league, right? So the big question with him better yet, when James Harden came here was, can Kyrie play the Ringo Starr of the bunch when really it's the John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George
Yeah,
Harrison?
he's Paul McCartney. That's
Exactly.
for sure.
Exactly.
And you want to know what tells me that's true? Harden played with Westbrook. Now, granted, it was a diminished Westbrook, but it was better than this Westbrook, and the results weren't the same. And I would say the Houston supporting cast was better than the current Nets supporting cast in the sense of who's in the front court. I think Capella and PJ Tucker is a better front court than what all of the different combinations we've had at the Nets. As surrounding pieces to a Harden and Westbrook, a Harden and CP3, Kyrie was able to change his game as a point guard to say, you know what, I'm going to be micro Kobe Bryant. I'm going to play this role. And Harden, you could have the ball in your hands and you could create. And even, that piece of willingness from Kyrie, it just goes to show, man, like he's the battery in the back of this thing. Like it's keeping Kevin Durant healthy, keeping Kyrie healthy, and also keeping Kyrie sane. I think the Nets are equipped to do it. Sam or Pooch. Do either one of you guys disagree with that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I totally disagree. I mean, look, Eve, your optimism always scares me as a neurotic Mets and Nets fan. Like that's always going to be tough for me to handle. But look, I think we definitely should get into the supporting guys that they're gonna hopefully bring in and how that.
I'm gonna back Eve up here real quick. Sorry, Sam. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I think the only team that could beat the Nets is themselves.
Yeah. But I mean, I did kind of say that before the pot started. Also.
but did you just said that you don't agree with him?
No. I'm just terrified of a insane neurotic jinxing of anything because I'm too used to like.
It's Nets fan nerves.
I mean, I was sweating during the. First of all, I was at the Nate Robinson Nets game in Chicago when he scored 25 points in the fourth quarter in that bowl series that I thought they were going to win.
Bad memory.
And I've been there for a lot of stuff.
Look, brother, I'm with you. I feel your pain. I understand what you're trying to say, but sit back, enjoy the show. I mean, you got James Harden, KD, and Kyrie. These are different Nets, my man.
No, they are. They totally are. I'm starting to get used to it. It's weird.
It's and like I don't want to come across.
It feels imaginary.
It doesn't feel real. But the thing is that the question I'm asking myself is not only do the Nets win the championship this year, but are they a dynasty that wins next year and the year after?
That's almost a good segue because you almost have to apply that when you're thinking of who you're gonna add this year, right? So far, we've added Blake Griffin. I think it's a hire it's a signing that has no risk. It's only $1.2 million. This is a dude who wants what we want. He wants to win a championship. That's the only reason why he'd give up that money and come here. He recognizes his basketball mortality, and he stored up all his jumps to come to Brooklyn and get this ring. And I first of all, give me your opinion. Before you give me your opinion on the piece, let me say this. I think Nash has a big role planned for him. It's not going to happen immediately, but I think they had a conversation in that swanky little Brooklyn bistro, and basically Nash said, "Look, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to slowly bring you in. You can start showing people that you have your superpowers again, and I'm seeing you as a four-man." Now, we all thought he was going to be a center, but now that he's talking this four-man thing, like, critique this signing, Pooch.
First, I think the Nets are a step ahead of everybody. I think something to keep in mind. Look, they had Steve Nash hired in the summer while they're still in the bubble, and then James Harden and Blake Griffin were two of the players that were working out with KD, Kyrie, in the summer in California. So were they having those conversations beforehand? Going back.
Yes. The answer is yes.
So I'm looking at this team right now, and I understand Blake Griffin hasn't dunked the basketball since December 2019, and I don't think that's an anomaly. I think his legs are shot. I think, look, speaking with people in Detroit, they were telling me like, yo, his defense is shot. Like he could not defend anybody this year. He was falling over himself. With that being said, like you said, Eve, like there's no risk in this. I mean, you have a guy that could still score 12, 15 points a game. He's not going to need the rock in his hands. He has that Nick Batum effect, going from Charlotte to the Clippers.
That's a great one.
Joining a championship team, coming off the bench behind KD, coming off the bench behind James Harden. Like when your role and the expectations go way below from where you're the number one guy in Detroit to now the number 6, number 7, number 8 guy in Brooklyn on a championship contending team, basketball becomes a whole lot more fun. The game comes a lot easier after that. So for me, I understand like his weaknesses. I understand why people, might not feel like it's not the needle mover, but it's everything the Nets should be doing to go win a championship. These veteran players that are kind of out of their prime, but still can bring something to the table. This is what happens. They flock to the championship contending team. And Blake Griffin is the latest example. I think he's one of many that's going to happen over the next year or two.
So, are you a Drummond guy too?
In what sense?
So there's two choices. Even though I think the Nets could sign both, and it wouldn't surprise me, but you have two choices. I'll give you three: Trevor Ariza, Andre Drummond, Otto Porter. Who are you signing, Pooch?
If you can go get Andre Drummond, you go get Andre Drummond. I mean, like people look past Andre Drummond. He's been on some awful teams, but this guy, he could put up 20-20 if he actually tried. Like most of his games are effortless, and he's still putting home 15 and 15 on bad teams. I understand that, but with the Nets, he'd be perfect here. I mean, like to have a bruiser like that could just hey Drummond, rebound the ball, play some defense, and set some hard screens for KD, Kyrie, and Harden. That's all you got to do.
All of the things he does well is the things that the Nets need.
Exactly. He fills the void that they need. That's why I liked him better than Blake.
It still could happen. Sam, you wanna make an argument for Otto Porter or Trevor Ariza?
No, I mean honestly, I Drummond to me is the obvious like guy that would just mean a world of difference. I mean, I know that like it's funny. A lot of people have been commenting about the Nets defense, and with good reason. I mean, like obviously it hasn't been great. I've been more concerned at times with just rebounding, and as like which I do kind of see as a different facet of the game. And I think what Pooch said is spot on. Like you put him on the team, and he just like if he's engaged, it's just a different ball. Like he's sucking up all those rebounds, and it's a total game changer. And the Nets in a lot of these games get killed with second chances. I mean, I think. Look, Porter is interesting because he's obviously like a bigger, more physical wing, which earlier in the year was all that we were talking about in terms of what they needed. But I mean, like first of all, it looks like there's a chance of both. But I mean, I think I totally agree in that. I think Drummond is the big time game changer, and I think there's a reason why. I mean, the Drummond watch from Nets Twitter. Nothing will ever compare to the Dwight Howard watch on Twitter, and that's when I felt like Twitter was really starting to blow up. I remember being a freshman in college and updating my hoops hype every 5 seconds, but the Drummond thing is definitely something that Nets fans are fixated on right now.
No, I don't think we see that one happen. Here's my argument for Otto Porter, even though I'm not making an Otto Porter argument. I think Otto Porter could be a KD understudy. Like, when KD has to get rest, you could roll out fake Otto Porter and keep KD from getting hurt. I mean, you could pull out fake KD in the form of Otto Porter and